All right, so for deleting sources, the first thing we're going to do is implement the playlist method. So this is actually not delete item, it's going to be delete source. I want to keep my terminology consistent. So we'll do playlist delete source. And after that, let's go ahead and implement that in our store. So let's hop on over to our playlist store. And I'm going to do delete source money. Source is going to be return this server emit action. Actually, I think before I did playlist remove, and then I passed in an ID of source.id. And I know that's not how you spell source, but fortunately we have ESLint to help us out there. And after we do that, let's go ahead and implement it on the server. And so don't worry about yet handling the events for when an item is removed. Let's just implement the code on the server. So to do that, let's jump into our playlist module. And down here after playlist set current, I'm going to do playlist remove. And we'll say simply ID. We'll use object deconstruction to grab that parameter out. Then I'm going to say basically the same thing. If not is logged in, return fail. You must be logged in to do that. And then I'm simply going to say this delete source by ID, ID. All right. Now, let's go ahead and implement the delete source by ID. So coming up here to the top, I'm going to say delete source by ID, ID. And the first thing that we need to do is check to make sure that the source actually exists. So I'm going to say const source equals this get source by ID, ID. If not source, then throw new error. Cannot find source ID. So don't worry, that error will be propagated back to the client, of course. And then I'm going to say const source index equals this playlist index of source. If source index equals this current item, so if we're trying to delete the current item, then this dot play next source. So if we're trying to delete the current item, just go ahead and preemptively move to the next item before we actually go about deleting it. Then I'm going to say this playlist dot splice source index by 1, so we delete one element at the source index. And then I'm going to say if this current source, so if we're currently playing an item, update the current source index. Update current index to be equal to this playlist index of this current source. So if we are playing an item, they might have deleted an item that was before the item that we're currently playing. So go ahead and update our current index. Then finally at the end of this io.emit playlist removed. And we're simply going to pass in the ID of the source that was removed. And then console log playlist deleted source title. All right, let's see if that works. So I'm going to come back over here. And even though the server's restarted a bunch of times, we actually do have to restart ourselves anyway because I did change some of the the store code. So let's relog in. Let's go ahead and add an item. Now let's right-click and delete that item. Now we don't get any visual feedback yet, but if we refresh, we should see that item has been deleted, and it has. So now I can just come on here, come through on a rampage, and just delete a bunch of these items. Let's try to delete an item twice. We get a fatal error, that's okay. But now if we refresh, all those items should be gone, and they are. All right, so now the next step is to go into the playlist store, go back into the playlist store, and handle the event for when a playlist item is removed. So let's do that. Let's jump into source client stores playlist. And let's come up here to the top and say server on money, playlist removed, map op remove. And then we'll want to scroll down and actually implement that. So let's scroll down here. And it doesn't matter where we add this. Function op remove, and then we'll extract out that ID with object deconstruction. Return state goes into const source equals state map ID. If not source, then return op error state could not remove source with ID as it was not found. Then we'll say const index equals state list index, or whoops, state list index of source. And then we'll say state list splice index 1, and then we'll delete state list, state map of ID. And then we'll return our action, and our action is simply going to be type is remove, source is source, state is state. So that's our store. So the next thing we have to do is implement this handler inside of our component. So let's go ahead and jump up to our list in our components, playlist list. And let's scroll up here. So after add, let's go ahead and do remove. So this playlist actions money, filter a type equals remove. And then we can say comp subscribe this, and this will just extract the source that was deleted. And for the remove, I'll simply say comp equals source, or whoops, item map source ID, and then this underscore remove item comp. So now we can go down and implement remove item. So take a look at that code. I probably won't be scrolling up again because that's a very straightforward piece of code there. Now let's scroll down. After add item, we're going to say remove item with the comp, and we're going to say comp element add class remove, and we'll do comp element, add class remove dot animate opacity to 0, 250 milliseconds, and then we'll do an onComplete handler. And on the onComplete handler, what we want to do is, well, let's see, we can do opacity 0, and why not? Why not also height 0? And then we'll say comp element remove, or sorry, comp detach. So we'll add the class remove, we'll animate the opacity down to 0, the height down to 0, wait 250 milliseconds, and then we'll detach. So for the, let's actually test to make sure this code works, and then we'll actually write the remove class. So let's come over here and refresh because we modified a store. Let's right click this and hit delete. Check that out. And now it's all deleted. And now if we hit play or add next and try to add a new item, cannot add source after 1 as it was not found. Cannot find ID with 1. So it seems like we have a bug here. We can get down to the last item, but it seems that when we delete every item, the server, let's wait 5 seconds, because I think the server, the server's still doing something silly here. And if we come over here, we do see that it was all deleted. Ooh, no, I know exactly what's causing this. Let's jump back into our playlist source server modules. Problem is we're doing if source index equals this current item, which source index, why did I do that? If its source equals this current item, then play next source. But in addition to that, let's play next source after we do the splice, but before we update the index. I think that'll fix the bug. So go ahead and make sure you update that. Go back to Chrome. Now we have a bunch more things to delete. Looks like we're still having a bit of an issue there with the current item. Cannot find item with ID 1. If source equals this current this current source. How did I get that so wrong? All right, so we're built. Let's go ahead and try to delete the current item. Delete the current item, and it does delete. There is a bit of this weird... Oh, the lag's gone. Okay. Okay, cannot find ID with item with ID null. We can fix that in a second here. Okay, that indeed works. Adding an item after the source. Is that... But we're having an issue with cannot find an item with ID null. I think that's because in my store, I don't account for the current item to be null. So that's another small bug. Some well-placed unit test would be really handy about right now. But it'd also make the series 20 times longer. Okay, so up current, cannot find item with ID blank. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say if... I'm going to say if ID equals null, then state current equals with a source null and a time of 0 and a progress of 0, and then we'll simply return on, or how about just do an else and wrap everything into an else here. There we go. That should fix that bug. So now we should be able to not have that. Are you still yelling at me? Why are you still yelling at me? If ID equals null, then state current equals empty. Let's see here. Oh, I know where that's happening. So I think we actually have a different bug here. Inside of our list, always test your edge cases. I'm pretty sure that's happening right here. So it's actually if current.source is null, I believe we'll fix that bug. So let's go ahead and refresh. And now we no longer are getting that error. Let's go ahead and log in and add an item. And we get that item. Let's delete that item. Let's delete that item. Okay, everything looks good. I think we have one small bug left, and that is when I remove an item, it jumps to the item after it was removed. So to fix that, let's jump back into our server module and fix our delete source by ID. I think actually the other way around was correct. If source equals current source, then immediately start to play next source. That I do think that should fix that. That shouldn't be a problem. And it seems that it's not. Okay. There we go. Okay, make sure that you play next source before you splice. That was my mistake. Sorry, guys. The point is that we can now delete everything. And that's what we're looking for. So now let's do one more thing. And it's just a little style thing. Let's jump into playlist SCSS. And let's scroll down to our playlist items li. And what I'm going to do down here, let's say above is playing. I'm going to say .remove. I'm going to say transform is translate x minus 200%. All right? So now let's see how that affects our styles here. So let's add in an element, or add in a video. Okay, our server store is still having emotional issues, guys. Our server module, rather. What am I not getting here? Am I blind? Oh, okay. There's another edge case I didn't realize. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, so if source is the current source, and if this playlist length equals 0, then this set current source to null. Otherwise, this play next source. That should fix it. Hopefully. All right, let's go ahead and test that out again. So let's delete. Let's delete you. You shouldn't jump up. You should only go to the next one. Let's set you to the next. Delete you. Let's set the last one to the next. Delete him. Okay, that all works. That all works. And then finally, when we get to the end of it, there we go. Oh, it's not equal 0. It's equal 1. I'm sure you guys are just sitting there laughing at all these, all of these tiny little logic issues. So if the length equals 1, that means by deleting that item from the playlist, it's going to go down to 0. And if it goes down to 0, we want to set the current source to null. Otherwise, we want to play the next source. So again, always, if you can, always hire good testers, because they're the kinds of people who will always track down these issues for you and make sure that you fix them. And we're back in business. So yeah, that is deleting elements. So we can set the current element, we can delete an element, and we can add new items. So our playlist is really shaping up. There's a couple more things I want to do with it, though. I want to go ahead and create the playlist Chrome, quote-unquote, which we'll see probably in the next video. The Chrome is a very, very simple component, but super fun to write. And then we are going to build our sorting. And then after that, we're done with the playlist. So we'll see you guys in the next video.